Now, this man right here may go down as one of the hardest punchers in heavyweight history. Now, of course, we're talking about the one, the only Deontay Wilder, the bronze bomber out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. On this edition of Sports Stories, and I know it's been a long time since we had one, we're going to be talking about him a little bit. We're going to be breaking down the brief yet successful amateur career, including that Olympic run. We're going to be talking about some highlights from earlier in his career. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about that Fury trilogy as well. And then we're going to, unfortunately break down some of those tribulations, the struggles he's had in the past 5 fights or so. And then we're going to ask a few questions. What could we expect? What should we expect? We're going to throw a few thoughts out there, throw a few questions out there. Hopefully you guys like what you saw today. And, of course, that will be followed up with a like, a subscribe, a share even, if you can. Of course, this is your man, El Jamal, and I'm back again. Let's get into it. Wilder would pick up boxing at the age of 23 and had an amateur record of 30-5. He would go on to capture the Golden Gloves. He would also win the U.S. National Championship and even took bronze in the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. As a pro, he won 25 straight by KO before claiming the WBC Continental title via KO versus Kelvin Price. His first high-profile fight at that point was a first-round KO of Ali Harrison in the UK back in 2013. However, Harrison was on his last legs at 41 and would retire soon after. He was supposed to have another big-time fight at Wembley Stadium versus Derek Chisora later on that year, but that deal would fall through. He also had some legal trouble, and he would even end up bringing in Al Heyman to be his advisor. His next big fight would come in 2014 against his now trainer Malik Scott in the WBC Eliminator. Wilder was ranked number 3 by the WBC, but Scott will be ranked number 26, and this never made any sense to me because obviously Scott would be overmatched. My question to the WBC is why wasn't Wilder in there, in the ring with somebody ranked in the top 10 or top 5 even, a real challenge. But again, Wilder gets the easy first round win and he sets himself up for the WBC title fight. Now that fight would come in 2015 versus Bermane Stiverne. Now this would be a surprising showing for Wilder, probably one of his, more complete performances. He won all 12 rounds, pretty much outboxed Stiverne, but he ended up getting a unanimous decision victory. He landed over 200 of his shots, and he landed at a slightly higher connect percentage. At this point, he would be the big man on campus, and he would switch promotions from Golden Boy to Al Heyman. After getting his first major title, Wilder would win 6 straight, including knockouts of Eric Molina, ranked number 14 by the WBC, and undefeated Gerald Washington. In October of 2017, he would get the best of a sloppy Stiverne in a rematch in Brooklyn. And this is when Tyson Fury would enter the picture, setting the scene for their future trilogy. Now, his toughest test yet during that moment in his career would come against Luis Ortiz. The bronze bomber dropped Ortiz 2 times in the 5th round, but got hurt himself really bad in round 7 and actually lost that round 10-8. I also think he was given a little bit of extra time by the doctors to recuperate. They wanted to, check on him and all this extra shit that wasn't necessary. But anyways, he would get the job done and he would take out Ortiz in round 10, of course, setting up that big time matchup with Tyson Fury. Wilder and Fury will finally meet in 2018, and this fight will be big for a number of different reasons. For one, this would not only be for Wilder's WBC title, this would also be for Fury's claim at the lineal heavyweight championship. Now, also, with that being said, Wilder was the only American title holder at the time in a very long time since Shannon Briggs, actually. So he was actually going into this one as a favorite for some people. So going into this one, I really didn't have a dog in this fight. I just wanted to see where both fighters were at, because I ain't never really seen them fight anybody of any real caliber to this extent, to be honest with you. So I really didn't know who to root for. So I wasn't surprised to really see it all, play out to be a draw. Both fighters did have their moments, although a case could be made for Fury because of, the big prominent knockdown. Fury did have a slight, connect percentage. If I'm not mistaken, he might have landed a few more punches as well. So, it could have gone either way. I'm definitely okay with it being a draw, but I would not be mad if it went in the direction of any of these different fighters. Now, in between, the first and the second fight, Wilder would, go ahead and have a tune-up fight actually two tune-up fights, he would go ahead and blast Dominic Brazil. He took him out in the first round. A lot of fake ground was created by his body bag, on my record comment. I just thought he was just selling the fight. I don't think anybody, at least black folk, taking that, not to say that we don't take him seriously, but we know that he just talking shit. We didn't feel no type of way about it. Everybody else got all violated or something. Let's just be real here, though. Brazil had nothing to offer in this fight. It was just easy work for Wilder. Again, I know what people are going to say if I do criticize too harshly, but at the same time, of course, everybody deserves a respect for jumping into the ring. I'm not taking it away from nobody, but there are levels to this, right? And let's just be real here. Dominic Brazil is, I would say, and I'm being nice here to be honest with you, C-level fighter. So again, Wilder gets an easy, come up victory in that one. He gets the iron hot again. He puts his name out there again. But like I said, Brazil really had nothing to offer. Nobody. He had one other championship appearance, and that was against Joshua. And again, it went pretty much the same way. So he really was not on their level. So anyways, he will go ahead and have a rematch with Ortiz. This time he will take him out in the 7th round. Again, he would end up tying Muhammad Ali in terms of title defenses in that fight. So again, he was able to do that. He did, make some history for himself. Now the rematch with him and Fury would come in February of 2020. Again, this one, for me, I never had a dog going into either one of these fights. I rather just watch. I wanted to just, watch them and kind of see how they played out and then have a decision to make or then have an idea how to feel. But this one, like I said, I didn't favor anyone going into this one. Both guys would come to this fight, significantly heavier than the first fight. Wilder was 231, the heaviest of his career. Now, would that slow him down? I think so. I think in terms of stamina, I think in terms of being able to do what he's used to doing, or what he already does. Let's be real here. He's a power puncher. He likes to set up, if you can say he sets up, and just kind of throws, his punches. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of force, particularly when you kind of just are swinging, particularly those swinging shots. And, the bigger you are, the heavier you are, particularly when you're missing those shots. That's a lot of energy. So Fury was able to tire, your boy out. And he caught him late, and it was one of those. Actually, no. I take that back. Not even late in this one. He caught him in round 7, and he was really, this being Fury now. Fury was, getting on Wilder. He got dropped in the 3rd. This being Wilder, and in the 5th. Again, Mark Breland had to throw in the towel. Again, Wilder didn't like that. He had to throw him under the bus. He fired Breland. And for what it's worth, though, Wilder, he needs the best trainer out there. He needs somebody who can actually train him. I know that you can't really throw Mark Breland under the bus for this situation, but he probably just wasn't the greatest trainer for him anyway. Again, this was just something that, a decision that Wilder wanted to make because, again, he didn't want to take accountability. Again, he wanted to blame the suit and all this other stuff. But Wilder had his number in the second one. Again, he did flash the power in the first fight, and he did drop Fury. But Fury came back from the dead, and, Fury came back with a vengeance in the second fight. And, there wasn't a whole lot Wilder could do. Now, Wilder would also come up short in the 3rd fight as well. He would get hurt early in the fight, but he would end up dropping Fury as well. So he had some momentum, and he would kind of, take this fight, I guess you can call it a distance. He would eventually get dropped and KO'd in the 11th. But I guess you could say he tried a little bit harder. He was there. But overall, when I look at the overall trilogy, right, I compare it to the rest of what, Wilder did. A lot of people are going to say, they're going to make a lot of the knockouts, and they're going to look at his record. They're going to look at, just the 4 losses.
And they're going to say, well, he doesn't have a whole lot of losses. He has all these different knockouts. But I look at the quality of opponent, and I think that, is going to be a key factor. We have to be fair, and we have to be honest with ourselves. When it was Eric Molina, sure, he can knock him out in a minute, 30 seconds. When it was Gerald Washington, yeah, Gerald Washington was undefeated at that time, but let's be real here. Where did Gerald Washington end up after that fight? Did he have a title? No. Long story short, no. So when we see him in the ring with the elite, or at least the top echelon in that time period, which of course is Tyson Fury, he gets a draw, and then he gets knocked out twice. That's not convincing enough for me. If your power is really that, generational, it shows up in one of those fights and you win one of those fights. You don't just knock Fury down and it's like, oh man, he's dead, and then he comes back from the dead and still ends up getting a draw. No, that punch should have knocked out Fury. So it says a lot to me that, so far all three of his losses, at least at this point of his career, or at least the two, had come against, higher echelon, or just, of course, the Tyson Fury. And, I already felt that, Ortiz had already challenged him. I already felt like even some of the more lower tier fighters had some success against him, although, they didn't end up winning the fight, but they did things to make him look a certain way. So I'm just being a little bit critical of things. I'm not gonna, sugarcoat it. I know a lot of people are gonna just try to, base everything about his power and just the excitement and the ooh-ah factor of it, but it's more to it than that. Because again, if it was all that, if it was really this generational, once-in-a-lifetime power, it would have KO'd Fury in that moment. Fury would not have gotten up. That's just how I look at it. And let's be real here, in both fights, at least the second and the third fights, he was pretty much behind on all three scorecards. I can't remember about the first, up until that knockdown, but again, there's a case that you can make for the first fight. Okay. And if he does, if he were to have won that first fight, even just that first fight, that changes things for me. But not winning any of those fights against a higher tier opponent, it's hard to put him in those spaces. So, but let's move on. We're gonna talk a little bit more about I guess how things kind of fell downhill a little bit. Yeah, let's talk about it. Wilder would get his last win about a couple years ago versus Robert Helenius out of Sweden. Now, of course, this one was another first-round knockout, but to be honest, I wasn't that impressed with this one. For one, I didn't know a whole lot about Helenius outside of him being 31-3 at the time, so the record was impressive, but outside of that, not much could be said about him. Again, and at that point, Wilder, at least for me, had developed a pattern of being really great against, I would say maybe C to C plus, caliber fighters, and not really having, a whole lot for the upper echelon of his division. So seeing him knock out Helenius, a guy I didn't know a whole lot about, basically, I don't, for lack of a, better word, a nobody, seeing another easy win like that, of course, I'm pretty sure the casual fan, your average fan, got really excited, really pumped up, because again, they like knockouts. But again, me knowing a little bit more and just knowing, what he's done against higher caliber opponents, I wasn't really that impressed. And sure enough, about maybe, a year or so, a little bit over a year later, he would get into the ring with Joseph Parker, of course, a former champion, and they were in the ring for 2 intercontinental titles, I believe, for the WBC and the WBO. 12-round fight, and, let's just be real here. Wilder looked like he didn't even stand a chance. And it wasn't even like he got knocked out or, extremely beat down per se. He was, bloody and all that. He wasn't bloodied up and all that, busted open. But, Parker just outboxed him. He moved a lot better. He had a, more potent offensive, arsenal.
He threw, he let his hands go. And Wilder seemed to fight very conservative. He didn't throw a lot of shots. He really didn't set up a whole lot of his power shots. Didn't move, didn't do a whole lot. He just took a whole lot of leather. And at the end of the day, of course, Wilder would lose via unanimous decision. And it wasn't even close. You had scorecards that read 118 to 110 and 120 to 108. That's not even close. So again, Wilder didn't show up. So again, it's things like that. It's fights like that I remember more so than the 97% knockout percentage, y'all. And I know a lot of y'all not gonna want to hear that, but for a fight fan like me, that's what I look at. Of course, he had his most recent fight at this point, maybe a couple months at this point, or a month or so ago. And again, if my pronunciation is wrong, particularly my Asian fight fans, please call me out. But of course, he was in the ring with Zhilei Zhang, and again, I didn't know too much about Zhang either up until this one. I did my basic research, just to kind of have a background going into this fight. But again, it wasn't like he was in the ring with a world beater either, like a great champion, somebody who's won the championship multiple times. Of course, he's never been in the ring with somebody like Fury or AJ, of course. So not much is known about how good he could potentially be, or he could be, at least in my opinion. But again, Wilder, for the second fight, at least in my opinion, in a row, he just seemed to just be mentally out of it, not throwing punches, not really committing to anything offensively. And again, he's not like he had a great defense either, so he's just taking shots throughout the fight. And then out of nowhere in round 5, you see him get dropped, and it's bad. His back is turned to him. And mind you, and I don't want to, tilt my hand in any way, but I do have to be honest. I was never a huge Wilder fan, but I do respect, him coming, his skill set for the most part, and what he did, in the ring for the most part. I really do. And to see him go out like that, especially, with how he, wanted to project himself and how, he wanted to be, a strong black fighter, American fighter, to see him, go out like that, it did kind of suck, to see all that happen. But it did lead to a lot of questions as somebody like me who's watched this sport for so long, who will like to get into, the analyzing side of this, a Stephen A type of, situation, whatever. All this watching, at least the last couple of fights for him brought so many, at least a few questions out for me. So let's get into those real quick. Now, my first question would be, I think like everybody else, what is next? Truly. There's speculation of him, retiring, hanging up the gloves. I haven't heard that come out of, his mouth, or even be, even really thought about from him or his camp, again. But that's something that people do talk about. Of course, you could always set him up at some point down the line. Of course, somewhat of a tune-up fight, of course, get his name back there again. The question will be with who. I guess after that will be when, how we set all this up, and what will be the plan after that. Is he still a world champion? Is he still that caliber? Can we see him in one of those fights? Just on the outside looking in, as a fan / amateur analyst, looking at it from that way, I don't personally see it as of today. That doesn't mean, you can put him in the ring, get him, in the ring with 2 solid fights, set it up, maybe 3, crafted fights for him, get his name out there again, boost his stock up, through the media, social media, and he's back in the same position he was a few years ago. He is engaging, he's very charismatic, and it's not like he doesn't have power. So you could theoretically set up something possibly near the future if he's able to get something going in terms of wins and winning streak. I would say probably more particularly. There's also this other thing that's floating around about this possible new weight division called the Bridger weight, which would be this weight class between cruiserweight and heavyweight. Now again, this is all even more speculation because again, the weight class itself technically doesn't exist yet. But apparently, if this weight class is to be formed, there's a lot of people within the boxing circles that would say Wilder is the man that we would probably push to be the face of that division. Now my whole thing is I don't know. They're saying Bridgerweight is supposed to be this class in between heavy and cruiserweight. The thing about all that is cruiserweight is already a 205 max. So anything after that, of course, is, heavyweight. Now, of course, you have your big time heavyweights, bigger heavyweights that are 250, 270 plus. I get that. There is going to be, of course, these weight discrepancies, right? And I totally get that. So I get the need for maybe a small little weight class in between there. I really don't see how feasible it would be though between me and you. I don't know, just to stick one little weight class in there just for that sake. I think it's a little bit out of whack. I don't see how it, again, and it's not like cruiserweights are that far off from your smaller heavyweights. So again, I don't see the need for a whole different weight class just to accommodate one dude. But again, like I said, it is another possibility. I think the second option that I mentioned, maybe you try to get him one or two big fights or one or two tune-up fights, 3 probably max, just to kind of get his name out there, get him popular again, get him on the sphere again, and get people looking at him. That would probably be more feasible than anything else. Another question, and this is not necessarily about, I guess for the future or anything like that, but maybe kind of thinking about the past a little bit. Is he the one that was truly ducking? Is he the one that ducked, AJ and not the other way around? I know a lot of people, particularly when he was... Now, this is another one of those, I almost feel like one of those catch-22 questions. Now, the reason why I say this is because I feel like on the surface, it's easy to say, particularly because he had a choice to either fight Fury again or to get that big money and to take on Joshua. I think he might even had the opportunity to take on Joshua first. Either way, the Joshua opportunity would have been a lot more lucrative. With that also being said, I also feel like there was a certain point in time, in every fighter's development, or at least in Fury's and AJ's development, where if Wilder would have had it his way and would have got into the ring with one of them, he might have been able to touch him. If Wilder, and this is a hypothetical, again, people can argue with me, and I'm okay with that. This is all Discord. I truly feel that there was a point in time right between the first Fury fight and the first fight with Stavern, that if Wilder would have stepped into the ring with Tyson, he probably would have caught him. There was a time right before the Andy Ruiz fight that Wilder probably could have caught AJ and been able to get something done too, possibly. For what it's worth, there is a quote, again, I am paraphrasing, of course. It did come from Wilder. And it was talking about, some of his quality of opponents. He talked about wanting to bring some of those guys in at different points of his career, probably, earlier. But, him being who he was at the time and being a potential threat in the division, how a lot of fighters would basically price themselves out of fights, make the purse bid too big so they would really, they would just discourage those types of fights. They weren't ready to fight him or risk anything just yet. So you do have that. I don't think anybody ducked anybody per se. It's a business. I think people, make the decision that works best for them for business and, of course, to get a win. And, I know people are so, judgmental about how people get their wins or whatever, or, choosing fights. But at the end of the day, every fighter and their camp chooses their fights.
I had the bodysuit on, and he came and he caught me just under the bodysuit. And again, me, it hurt, but who cares? I keep working. The next day, it's like, wow, that really hurt.
But again, for the most part, a lot of these fights are I know this is the trigger word for a lot of folk. They're cherry picked. Okay, so a lot of fighters were cherry picked perfectly for Wilder, just like a lot of fighters with Cherry picked perfectly for Tyson Fury and AJ as well. So do I believe one or the other guy, like I said, dodge each other? No, but they took on the biggest challenge, or what they felt would be the biggest challenge.
The man sitting here now is a very successful man.
So I don't think he
man,
ducked Joshua per se. No, and I don't think Joshua really ducked him. Now, my final question is, what is his overall impact / his legacy? Is he a Hall of Famer? Is he a GOAT? Does he fit in my pantheon discussion? Now, for those of you who are new to my content or not aware of what I like to call the pantheon, long story short, y'all, and this goes for every sport, I don't believe in a single GOAT, y'all. There's no such thing to me. Once you are considered a great, you go into the mix with the rest of them. I don't rank the greatest. They're just great. They're all great. So, does he fit into that category? Is he a Hall of Famer? Wow. This one right here I thought about for a long time. And I know this answer might be polarizing for a lot of people, but I'm willing to, tell it how it is, at least for me, how I view it. From what I've seen and me judging, based on his record, his resume, who he's beat, who he's lost against. If he were to retire tomorrow and you put me in a position of a Hall of Fame voter 5 or 10 years from now, and you put me, an opportunity to, sign off on his ballot or put him on a ballot with what I see right now, no. But under the circumstances that I did mention before, the possible one, the hypothetical one, in which he gets about a couple more fights, 3, I would say really it should be about 3 fights. Get him in there with a solid champion. Maybe he can catch AJ. Maybe he catches, Alexander Usyk down the line, or Parker. Maybe one of those guys. A win against one of those guys might change things for him. But I think if you look at it right now, you have his best win against, if we're talking about against a quality opponent, if we're being realistic, we would have to say Jose Ortiz, right? We would have to look at, how Ortiz's career finishes and what our views on him is as well. Before we, again, and we have to equate that with, okay, now Wilder beat him. What does that really mean? Those questions come into factor. Again, he hasn't fought AJ. Again, the best person he's fought is Fury, and Fury's beaten him. He's lost to Fury twice, and he tied against him. Again, a win against Fury would have changed things. At least for somebody like me, I personally would have been okay with it had he would have won against Fury once. But the fact that he has no wins against Fury, he has these knockout wins against people we've never really heard of. Again, against these guys who never ended up doing a whole lot in the division, like Brazil, Gerald Washington. Is he in the pantheon? For hard punchers, yes. For boxers overall, or even his division, no, y'all. I think he's just possibly just a step below. I know a lot of people are going to make a lot about his knockouts and his knockout percentage, but if we look at who he's fought, I personally can't roll with it, y'all. And that's being real. Now, some more personal thoughts. Now, like I said, on the guy, I completely was out of the hype for a lot of the years. I can't really, for a long time, I couldn't really gauge the quality of his opponents until he fought Fury. So that's why I'm very serious and very heavy on how that Fury series played out. How I judge him, and the fact that he couldn't beat Fury, which is pretty much the big name on his resume, that says a lot to me. So again, we can't really pull a whole lot of names of guys that he's beat that are really these world-class fighters. Let's be real here. Stop. Don't even. Don't think about it right now. Because if you're gonna try to make a case for Dominic Brazil, don't. Okay. Again, he fought Stavern twice. Stavern was completely out of shape the second time. Was sloppy. Was nothing. So again, he was a great puncher, but he had a great right hand. That's all his arsenal had. Personally, he had a decent enough jab, but again, just the right hand, decent jab. We're not talking about an uppercut. He didn't really throw hooks or body shots.
You got knocked the fuck out, man.
Not a lot of stuff there. Like I said, he had great charisma. A lot of people really into his style and how he, promoted himself. Those were great things about him. Didn't really have the most solid boxing IQ either. He wasn't the type to make adjustments pre-fight or throughout a series of fights. Not the type of guy to do that. Now, he had way too many excuses, particularly between the second and third Fury fight. Come on, nobody wanted anything here to get after a while, and it got to be very tiresome. just letting it all hang out. Now, this one I can't prove. A lot of people say these things, but there is that pushback that people have about his training or about him being serious. Again, I don't know him personally, and I don't know anybody personally within his sphere of boxing and the people who might be affiliated. I don't know anybody that's close to him or his training or that even on that side of the planet or in his state particularly to really gauge that or really get on that. But this is something that I hear, and judging by how his fights go, you would think you would probably put 1 and 2 together. Now, he must not be training that great if he's looking that bad in his fights. You never know. He could be training decently. He just could be just getting in the ring with guys who are just a little bit better than him. At the end of the day, y'all, no disrespect to him. I think he had great power. But he's on the level of Ernie Shavers, in my opinion. On most nights, his right hand will catch most fighters. But when it comes to those championship level moments and those championship caliber fights, I don't think he presented the arsenal in order to get those wins, bottom line. But a solid fighter nonetheless with tremendous power. And if given some luck and, given the right, I would say, coaching, I think he has enough in the tank to at least get one more crack at a title, though, with all that being said. All right, y'all, if you like what you saw today, please be sure to like and subscribe, all that good stuff, share it and all that. Please comment. I need all the support I can get. I'm trying to get this thing off the ground. I've been working on this for a while now. The channel, the videos, everything, all that. I've been through so many changes with what I want to do with all this platform. So please give me the like, the support, and so I can keep on pushing. I don't need the money right now. I don't need all that. I just need to know that people give a damn to some extent. So please, y'all, do what you can do, and I'll be keeping on with this content that I can do, and I'll keep on making sure it's the best of my ability. All right, y'all, it's your man El Jamal. If anybody hasn't told you yet, I love you. Peace out, one love, and I'll holla at y'all later.